The courtroom floated in silence. Officer Derek Morrison checked his uniform one more time before entering through the main door. His magnetic boots clicked against the metal floor as he walked toward the witness section. The case today was simple. Two mining companies fighting over who owned rights to a small asteroid near Jupiter. Derek was here because station security had to verify some documents. Nothing complicated. Nothing interesting. Just another day of work on Neo-Chicago Orbital Station. The station floated high above Earth. From the windows, you could see the blue planet slowly turning below. Derek had lived here for 6 years now. He knew every corridor, every rule, every procedure. He was good at his job. Everyone said so. He followed the rules. He kept people safe. He never let anyone break protocol. Derek sat down in the witness area and waited. Other officers nodded at him. He nodded back. The judge would arrive soon. Then they would start. Then he would give his testimony. Then he would leave. Simple. The door opened again. A woman walked in. She wore simple civilian clothes. A dark blue jacket, black pants, no uniform, no badge visible. She looked around the courtroom like she was searching for something. Her hair was pulled back tight. She carried a small data pad in her hand. The woman walked toward the witness preparation area. That section was restricted. Only official personnel could enter. Derek stood up immediately. This was his job. Keep unauthorized people out of restricted areas. Simple. He stepped in front of her. His hand went up. "Stop, ma'am," Derek said. His voice was firm, professional. "This area is restricted to official personnel only. You need to go back to the public gallery." The woman stopped. She looked at him calmly. No anger on her face. No surprise, just calm. She reached into her jacket pocket. "I have clearance," she said quietly. "If you check your data pad, you will see my credentials." Derek did not reach for his data pad. He had seen this before. People always said they had clearance. They always made excuses. They always tried to go where they should not go. His job was to stop them. The rules were clear. "I don't need to check anything," Derek said. His arms crossed over his chest. "You need to return to the public gallery now. This is your first warning." Other officers in the room turned to watch. They saw Derek blocking the woman. They saw his crossed arms, his firm stance. Some of them looked uncomfortable, but nobody said anything. The woman stayed calm. She pulled out a card from her pocket, a military identification card. She held it up for Derek to see. "Here are my credentials," she said. "Commander Lisa Washington, Mars Defense Force. I have full access clearance for this facility." Derek barely looked at the card. He had already made his decision. Military credentials meant nothing here. This was station police jurisdiction, not military jurisdiction. The rules were clear on that too. "Military credentials do not override station police jurisdiction," Derek said. He felt confident. He was right. He knew the rules. "Step back now, ma'am. Final warning." The woman looked at him for a long moment. Her face showed nothing, no anger, no frustration, nothing. She just stood there, calm, quiet, watching him. Derek felt more certain now. He was doing the right thing, protecting the restricted area, following protocol. This was exactly what a good officer should do. He tapped his communication device. "Security to courtroom 7. Need escort for unauthorized civilian. Immediate response requested." The woman put her identification card back in her pocket. She did not argue. She did not raise her voice. She did not make a scene. She simply nodded once. "Very slowly, I understand," she said softly. "I will wait in the public gallery." 2 security officers arrived within minutes. They looked confused when they saw the woman. One of them seemed to recognize her. His eyes went wide. But Derek waved them forward. "Please escort this person to the public gallery," Derek told them. She attempted to access a restricted area without proper authorization. The security officers looked at each other. They looked at the woman. They looked back at Derek. Nobody moved for a moment. The woman spoke first. "It is fine," she said to the security officers. "I will go to the public gallery." "No problem." She turned and walked away. The security officers followed her. They kept looking back at Derek. Their faces showed something. Surprise maybe, or worry. Derek could not tell. Derek returned to his seat. He felt good about what he had done. He had followed the rules. He had protected the restricted area. He had done his job exactly as he was trained to do it. But something felt strange in the courtroom now. People were whispering. Other officers were looking at him. Some were checking their data pads. One officer walked over to Derek. "Do you know who that was?" the officer whispered. "Some civilian trying to access a restricted area?" Derek replied. "Why?" The other officer opened his mouth, then closed it. He shook his head and walked away. Derek noticed someone in the back of the courtroom, a young lawyer with a neural implant. The small device on his temple was blinking. Recording. He had recorded the entire interaction. Derek felt a small twist in his stomach, but he pushed it away. He had done nothing wrong. Let them record. Let them watch. He had followed every rule, every procedure, exactly as written. The judge entered the courtroom. Everyone stood. The case began. Derek gave his testimony about the security documents. He answered questions. He provided the information needed. Everything went smoothly, but the whole time he could feel eyes on him. People were still whispering, still checking their devices, still looking at him strangely. When the court session ended, Derek left quickly. He walked down the corridor toward the security office. His shift was almost over. Tomorrow there would be a big announcement. The new police chief was arriving. Everyone had been talking about it for weeks. The old chief had retired and moved back to Earth. Now someone new was coming to run the entire orbital police division. Derek wondered who it would be. Someone from Mars, maybe, or from the Venus station. Someone with experience, someone who understood how important rules and procedures were. He went home to his small apartment on the station. He ate dinner. He watched the news. He prepared his dress uniform for tomorrow's ceremony. Everything normal. Everything routine. That night, Derek slept well. He had no idea that his entire life was about to change. He had no idea that the woman he had removed from the courtroom was about to become the most important person in his career. He had no idea that tomorrow morning he would understand the biggest mistake he had ever made. All he knew was that he had followed the rules. And in his mind, that was all that mattered. Derek woke up early the next morning. Today was important. The whole police force would gather in the main assembly hall. The new chief would be introduced. Derek wanted to look perfect. He put on his dress uniform carefully. He polished his badges until they shined. He checked himself in the mirror 3 times. The assembly hall was already filling up when Derek arrived. Hundreds of officers stood in neat rows. Everyone wore their best uniforms. Everyone looked serious and professional. Derek found his place in the middle section. He stood straight, shoulders back, eyes forward. Other officers around him were talking quietly, speculating about the new chief. Some said it would be someone from Mars. Others said Venus station. A few thought it might be someone from Earth, but nobody knew for sure. The announcement had been kept secret. Derek listened but said nothing. He was thinking about yesterday, the incident in the courtroom. The woman he had removed. Something about it still bothered him. Not because he had done anything wrong, but because of how everyone had reacted. The strange looks, the whispers, the recordings. He pushed the thoughts away. Today was about the future, about the new leadership, about moving forward. Station Commander Gregory Hayes walked onto the stage. The room went silent immediately. Commander Hayes was an older man with gray hair and a stern face. He had run Neo-Chicago Station for 15 years. Everyone respected him. Everyone listened when he spoke. "Good morning, officers," Commander Hayes said. His voice filled the hall through the speakers. "Today marks an important moment for our station. We welcome new leadership to the Orbital Police Division. Someone with an exceptional record, someone who will bring fresh perspective and strong experience to our operations." Derek listened carefully. He wondered what fresh perspective meant. He hoped it did not mean changing too many rules. Rules were important. They kept everything working smoothly. "Your new chief served 15 years in the Mars Defense Force," Commander Hayes continued. "She earned 3 commendations for valor during the Titan blockade. She designed the Venus Station security protocol that reduced crime by 40%. Her record speaks to dedication, intelligence, and leadership." Derek noticed the commander said she. So the new chief was a woman. That was fine. Derek had worked under female officers before. Gender did not matter. Only competence mattered. "Officers," Commander Hayes said. "Please welcome Chief Lisa Washington." The side door opened. A woman walked onto the stage. She wore a full-dress uniform, dark blue with gold trim, badges and ribbons covered her chest. Her hair was pulled back tight. She walked with confidence. With purpose, Derek felt his heart stop. His breath caught in his throat. His hands went cold. It was her, the woman from the courtroom. The woman he had blocked. The woman he had called security to remove. The civilian he had treated like she was breaking the rules, except she was not a civilian. She was Commander Lisa Washington. No, not Commander anymore. Chief Lisa Washington, his new boss, the person who would now control his entire career. The room erupted in applause. Officers clapped loudly. Some whistled. Some cheered. Everyone seemed excited about the new chief. Everyone except Derek. His hands stayed frozen at his sides. He could not move. Could not think. Could not breathe properly. Chief Washington stepped to the microphone. She looked out over the assembled officers. Her eyes swept across the room. Then they found Derek. For just a moment their eyes met. Her expression showed nothing. No anger. No recognition. Nothing. Just professional calm. "Thank you, Commander Hayes," Chief Washington said. Her voice was clear and strong. "Thank you all for this welcome. I am honored to serve as your chief. I look forward to working with each of you to keep this station safe and secure." She spoke about her vision for the force, about community relations, about fair treatment for everyone, about the importance of checking assumptions, about how good police work required more than just following rules. It required understanding people. Derek heard the words but could barely process them. His mind was spinning, playing the courtroom scene over and over, how he had blocked her, how he had refused to check her credentials, how he had called security, how he had treated her like she was nobody important, and all the while she had been the new chief, coming to observe the station, coming to see how things worked before taking command. And he had humiliated her, in front of other officers, in front of witnesses, in front of someone recording it all. "I believe in second chances," Chief Washington was saying. "I believe people can learn from mistakes. I believe in growth and improvement. But I also believe in accountability, in taking responsibility for our actions, in facing the consequences of what we do." Derek felt sick. She was talking about him. She had to be. Everyone would know by now. The recording had probably spread through the entire station. Everyone would have seen it. Everyone would know what he did. "Yesterday I arrived at this station," Chief Washington continued. "I wanted to observe our operations quietly, to see how things work when nobody knows the new chief is watching. What I saw taught me some things about our training, about our procedures, about areas where we need to improve." Derek wanted to disappear, to sink through the floor, to be anywhere else but here. After this assembly, Chief Washington said, "I want to meet with all senior officers. We will discuss some changes to our training programs, some updates to our procedures. Officer Morrison, please stay after that meeting. I need to speak with you privately." The words hit Derek like a punch. Every officer in the room turned to look at him. Some looked sympathetic. Some looked curious. Some looked relieved it was not them being called out. Derek felt hundreds of eyes on him. He kept staring straight ahead, face burning, heart pounding. This was it. His career was over. 6 years of service gone, because of one mistake, one moment of not checking credentials, one assumption. The assembly ended. Officers began filing out. Derek stood frozen. Other officers patted his shoulder as they passed. "Good luck," some whispered. Others said nothing, just looked at him with pity. The senior officers' meeting felt like it lasted forever. Chief Washington talked about new training initiatives, about community outreach, about improving relations with civilians. Derek heard none of it. He was thinking about what to say, how to apologize, whether an apology would even matter now. Finally, the meeting ended. The other officers left. Derek remained in his seat. Chief Washington gathered her papers. She did not look at him yet, just organized her materials calmly, taking her time. The silence stretched out. Derek wanted to speak but could not find words. "What do you say to someone you humiliated, someone who now controls your future, someone you treated like they did not matter?" Finally, Chief Washington looked up. Her eyes met his. Her expression was unreadable. "Officer Morrison," she said quietly, "please follow me to my office. We need to talk. Derek stood on shaking legs. He followed her out of the conference room, down the corridor, past other officers who quickly looked away, into the elevator, up to the command level, through the outer office, into her private office. The office had a huge window. Earth filled the view, blue and beautiful and impossibly far away. Chief Washington walked to her desk. She did not sit, just stood there. Looking at him, Derek stood at attention, eyes forward, heart hammering, waiting for the words that would end his career, waiting for the consequences of what he had done. And then Chief Washington spoke. "Do you know why I did not identify myself yesterday?" Chief Washington asked. Her voice was calm, but Derek could hear something else underneath it. Not anger exactly. Something else. Disappointment, maybe. Derek swallowed hard. His throat felt dry. "No, ma'am," he managed to say. Chief Washington walked to the window. She looked out at Earth below. "Because I wanted to see how officers treat people when they think nobody important is watching, when there is no pressure to be on their best behavior, when they are just doing their regular job." Derek said nothing. What could he say? She was right. Your behavior yesterday was not about following protocol, Officer Morrison. Chief Washington turned to face him. You made assumptions. You looked at me and decided I did not belong in that area. You did not check my credentials. You did not scan my identification properly. You just decided I was wrong and you were right. Ma'am, Derek started. I am not finished. Her voice stayed level but firm. You had multiple opportunities to simply check my identification. 5 seconds on your datapad would have shown you who I was. But you chose not to look. Why? Derek felt his face burning. He wanted to say he was just following rules, that he was being careful, that he was doing his job. But he knew those were excuses. Deep down he knew the truth. He had looked at her and made a judgment. A quick assumption based on nothing but appearance. I have no excuse, ma'am, Derek said quietly. What I did was wrong. I should have checked your credentials. I should have listened. I apologize. Chief Washington studied him for a long moment. An apology is a start, but it does not change what happened. It does not undo the humiliation. It does not erase the fact that you called security to remove your commanding officer from a courtroom. Derek felt sick. She was going to fire him. He knew it. He deserved it. However, Chief Washington continued. She walked back to her desk and sat down. I looked at your service record this morning. 6 years on the force. Good arrest record. Multiple commendations. You saved 3 people during the reactor incident last year. You put your own life at risk to help others. That tells me something about your character. Derek looked up, confused. Where was this going? It tells me you are capable of good judgment, Chief Washington said, which makes yesterday even more troubling, because it shows me that even good officers can make terrible mistakes when they rely on assumptions instead of facts, when they let bias cloud their thinking. Bias, Derek repeated. The word felt heavy. Yes, bias. Chief Washington leaned forward. We all have it, Officer Morrison. The question is whether we recognize it and work to overcome it, or whether we let it control our actions without even realizing it. Derek thought about that. Had he been biased? He wanted to say no, but he could not. Because if Chief Washington had been wearing a uniform yesterday, if she had been a white man in a suit, would he have stopped her the same way? Would he have refused to check credentials? Would he have called security? He did not know. And that scared him. I am not going to fire you, Chief Washington said. Derek felt relief flood through him. Then confusion. Why not? Because I believe people can change, because your record shows you are capable of better, and because I have a special assignment that requires someone with your skills, someone who also needs a chance to prove they can learn from their mistakes. Chief Washington pulled up a file on her desk screen. There is a situation developing on the Ceres mining colony. Tensions between workers and the mining corporation, protests, threats of violence. The colony security coordinator has requested help from station police. Derek listened carefully now. A mining colony. That was serious. Those situations could turn violent quickly. 15,000 people lived on Ceres. Most of them worked in dangerous conditions, deep in the asteroids, mining valuable minerals for Earth and the other planets. I am sending you to Ceres, Chief Washington said. Your job is to work with their security coordinator, to help establish dialogue between the workers and the corporation, to prevent violence, ma'am. Derek said slowly. I am not trained in negotiation. I am a patrol officer. I enforce laws. I am not sure I am the right person for this. You are exactly the right person. Chief Washington looked at him directly. Because this mission requires someone who can admit when they are wrong, someone who can listen instead of just acting, someone who understands what happens when you make assumptions about people. Derek understood now. This was not just an assignment. This was a test, a chance to prove he could do better, could be better. The workers on Ceres have legitimate complaints, Chief Washington continued. Unsafe conditions, poor medical care, contracts that favor the corporation over worker safety. But the corporation also has valid concerns, tight profit margins, expensive operations, competition from other colonies. So both sides think they are right, Derek said. Exactly. And both sides are preparing for conflict. Your job is to help them see past their assumptions, to help them listen to each other, to find solutions instead of fighting. Chief Washington stood up. You leave tomorrow morning. You will work with Marcus Chen. He is the security coordinator there. He knows the situation well. Listen to him. Learn from him. And most importantly, check your assumptions before you act. Derek stood as well. Yes, ma'am. I understand. Do you, Chief Washington asked. Do you really understand what I am asking you to do? Derek thought about it. Really thought about it. You are asking me to do what I failed to do yesterday, to look past appearances, to check facts before making judgments, to listen before acting, to see people as individuals instead of categories. Chief Washington nodded slowly. Good. You do understand. Now prove you can actually do it. She handed him a data chip. This has all the information about the situation on Ceres. Read it tonight. Study it carefully. You need to understand what you are walking into. Derek took the chip. I will not let you down, ma'am. Chief Washington looked at him for a long moment. I hope not, Officer Morrison, because this is not just about you. This is about 15,000 people whose lives depend on someone being smart enough to prevent a disaster, someone being wise enough to build bridges instead of walls. Derek felt the weight of it. The responsibility. The second chance he did not deserve but was getting anyway. Dismissed, Chief Washington said. Derek turned to leave. He reached the door. Then he stopped and turned back. Ma'am, why are you giving me this chance? After what I did. Most chiefs would just fire me and be done with it. Chief Washington smiled slightly. It was the first smile Derek had seen from her. Because someone once gave me a second chance when I made a terrible mistake. Someone believed I could learn and grow. And they were right. Now I am passing that forward, she paused. And because I see something in you, Officer Morrison. Potential. The capacity to become not just a better officer, but a better person. Do not waste it, Derek nodded. Unable to speak. He left the office. The door closed behind him. He stood in the corridor for a moment, just breathing, processing everything that had happened. He had been given a gift, a second chance, a way to prove himself. But more than that, he had been given a lesson about assumptions, about bias, about the difference between following rules and actually serving people. Derek walked to the elevator. Tomorrow he would go to Ceres. Tomorrow he would face a crisis that could turn violent. Tomorrow he would have to put everything he just learned into practice. But tonight he would study. He would prepare. And he would think very carefully about the kind of officer he wanted to be. The transport ship to Ceres took 3 days. Derek spent most of that time reading the files Chief Washington had given him. The situation was worse than he had thought. Much worse. 2 months ago, there had been an accident in Mine 7. A support beam had collapsed. 12 workers died. The investigation showed the corporation had used cheaper materials to save money. Materials that did not meet safety standards. The families of the dead workers wanted justice. The corporation offered small payments and refused to admit fault. After that, a group formed. They called themselves the Belter Liberation Front. Workers who were tired of being treated as disposable. Tired of unsafe conditions. Tired of corporations valuing profits over lives. They organized protests, strikes, demonstrations. The corporation responded by threatening to fire anyone who joined the protests. They brought in security forces, private contractors with weapons and armor. Tensions escalated. Now both sides were preparing for conflict. Violence seemed inevitable. Derek read about the leader of the Belter Liberation Front. Carmen Rodriguez, age 32, born on Earth but raised on Mars, came to Ceres 8 years ago to work in the mines, lost her brother in the Mine 7 accident. According to the reports, she was smart, determined, and angry. Very angry. The transport finally docked at Ceres. Derek gathered his gear and stepped out into the colony. It was different from Neo-Chicago Station. Darker, more cramped. The corridors were narrow and crowded. People moved quickly, heads down, focused on getting where they needed to go. Nobody smiled much. Marcus Chen met him at the docking bay. The security coordinator was a short man with graying hair and tired eyes. He looked at Derek with obvious skepticism. "Another station cop who thinks he understands life out here," Marcus said. No greeting, no handshake. Just that one statement. Derek felt his first instinct rise up. Defensiveness, anger at being judged. But he stopped himself. Remembered Chief Washington's words. "Listen first. Check assumptions." "You are right," Derek said. "I don't understand life here. That is why I need you to teach me. I am here to learn, not to tell you how to do your job." Marcus stopped walking. He turned and looked at Derek carefully. Really looked at him, like he was seeing him for the first time. "Well," Marcus said slowly, "that is a first. Usually you station types show up and start giving orders immediately." "I made that mistake once already," Derek said. "I am trying not to repeat it." Marcus studied him for another moment. Then he nodded. "Okay, come on. I will show you around. Help you understand what we are dealing with here." For the next week, Marcus took Derek everywhere. To the mines where workers spent 12-hour shifts in dangerous conditions. To the medical center where doctors struggled with inadequate equipment. To the living quarters where families crowded into small spaces. To the company offices where managers worked behind security barriers. Derek listened. Really listened. He talked to miners about their work, about the dangers they faced every day, about the equipment failures, about watching friends die because the corporation cut costs. He listened to their anger, their fear, their frustration. He also talked to the corporation managers. They showed him financial reports, explained how expensive it was to operate a mining colony, how competition from other asteroids drove prices down, how they were barely making profit, how safety improvements would cost millions they did not have. Both sides made sense. Both sides had legitimate concerns. That made it harder, not easier, because it meant there was no simple villain, no easy solution. On the 6th day, Derek asked Marcus about meeting with Carmen Rodriguez, the leader of the Belter Liberation Front. Marcus shook his head. "She will not talk to you," Marcus said. "She doesn't trust police, especially not police from the stations. She thinks you all work for the corporations. Will she talk to you?" Derek asked. "Maybe. We have some history. I helped her family after her brother died. But she is still suspicious." Derek thought about it. Then he made a decision. "Ask her if she will meet with me. Tell her I am not here to arrest anyone, not here to shut down the protests. I am here to listen, to understand, to try to find a way forward that doesn't end in violence." Marcus looked doubtful. "I can ask, but don't get your hopes up." 2 days later, Marcus came to Derek with surprising news. Carmen had agreed to meet. But she had conditions. No uniform, no weapons, no backup. Just Derek in a public place of her choosing. Derek agreed immediately. Marcus looked worried. "You know this could be a setup," Marcus said. "The Liberation Front has some members who want violence, who see police as the enemy. Walking in there alone could be dangerous." "I know," Derek said. "But if I show up with weapons and backup, I prove their point. I prove that police do not trust them, do not respect them. This is about building trust. That requires taking risks." The meeting was set for the next day. A small cafe in the commercial sector. A public place, but one where the Liberation Front had support. Where Derek would be surrounded by people who did not trust him. Derek arrived early. He wore civilian clothes. Just pants and a shirt. No badge, no weapon. He sat at a corner table and waited. People in the cafe watched him. They knew who he was. Word spread fast on a small colony. The station cop who came to talk to Carmen. Some people looked hostile. Others just curious. Nobody looked friendly. Carmen arrived 20 minutes late. Derek suspected that was intentional. A power move, making him wait, testing his patience. He did not mind. He just sat calmly and waited. When Carmen walked in, Derek recognized her from the photos. But photos had not captured her intensity. The way her eyes swept the room, missing nothing. The way people straightened up when she passed. The way she carried herself like someone who had been through fire and come out harder. She sat down across from Derek. Did not offer her hand. Just looked at him coldly. "You are taking a risk," she said, "coming here without backup." "So are you," Derek replied. Talking to law enforcement, Carmen studied him. "Why are you here, really? The truth." Derek took a breath. "Because I recently learned what it feels like to be judged before being heard. To be treated like you don't matter. To have someone make assumptions about you based on how you look instead of who you are." Something flickered in Carmen's eyes. Surprise, maybe. She had not expected that answer. "And I am here because 15,000 people live on this colony. Good people. Workers and families. And they deserve better than a violent conflict that will only get people killed." Carmen leaned back. "Pretty words. But words are easy. Actions matter. What are you actually willing to do?" "I am willing to listen," Derek said. "Really listen. Not just pretend to listen while waiting to give orders. I want to understand your perspective, your concerns, what you need to prevent this from turning violent." Carmen looked at him for a long time. The cafe was quiet. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen. Finally, Carmen spoke. "Okay, I will talk to you, but not because I trust you, because Marcus vouches for you, and because I am tired of watching people die. If there is any chance to fix this without more bloodshed, I have to take it." She signaled to the server, ordered coffee for both of them. Then she started talking, and Derek listened. Carmen talked for 3 hours straight. Derek listened without interrupting. He took notes on his data pad, not to build a case against her, not to gather evidence, just to remember, just to understand. She told him about her brother, how he had been 24 years old when he died in Mine 7, how he had reported the safety problems 3 times, how the managers had ignored him, how he went to work that day knowing the mine was dangerous but having no choice because his family needed the money, how the beam collapsed and killed him along with 11 others. She told him about the other accidents, the smaller ones that never made the news, workers losing fingers, getting sick from bad air, developing lung problems from the dust, medical care that was slow and inadequate, doctors who did their best but did not have the equipment they needed. She told him about the contracts, how workers signed them without understanding what they were agreeing to, how the corporation owned the housing, owned the stores, owned everything, how workers could not leave because they owed money to the company, how it felt like being trapped. "We tried legal channels first," Carmen said. Her voice was heavy with frustration. "We filed complaints, lawsuits, reports to station authorities. Nothing changed. The corporation has lawyers, money, influence. We have nothing, just our labor. So we organized. Formed the Liberation Front, started protesting. It was the only option left." Derek wrote it all down. Then he asked questions. Not challenging questions. Not interrogation questions. Just questions to understand better, to see the whole picture. "What would it take?" Derek asked finally. "What would it take to prevent violence? To reach an agreement that both sides could accept?" Carmen looked surprised by the question. "You actually want to know?" "I do," Derek said. "That is why I am here. Not to shut you down. Not to arrest anyone. To find solutions." Carmen thought about it. Then she started listing demands. Independent safety inspections. Not by company employees but by outside experts. Monthly inspections with public reports. Worker representation on the colony council. Real representation with voting power. Better medical equipment and more doctors. A mediation process for contract disputes. Profit sharing so workers benefited when the colony did well. Derek listened and wrote. Some demands seemed reasonable. Others seemed difficult but possible. A few seemed almost impossible given the corporation's financial situation. But he wrote them all down anyway. "I need to talk to the corporation managers," Derek said when Carmen finished. "Hear their side. Understand their constraints. Then maybe we can find common ground." "They will never agree to any of this," Carmen said bitterly. "They only care about profit maybe," Derek said. "Or maybe they are scared too. Scared of losing everything. Scared of competition. Scared of failure. Fear makes people do stupid things. Makes them refuse to compromise even when compromise is the smart choice." Carmen looked at him carefully. "You are different from other cops I have met." "I am trying to be," Derek admitted. "I made some bad mistakes recently. Learned some hard lessons? I am trying to do better. The meeting ended. Carmen agreed to hold off on any major protests while Derek talked to the corporation. Derek agreed to present her demands fairly and completely. They shook hands. It felt like progress. Small progress, but progress. That night, Derek sent a detailed report to Chief Washington. He laid out everything Carmen had told him, everything he had learned. He presented the demands and explained why each one mattered. Then he asked for help, legal experts, a professional mediator, resources to make this work. Chief Washington's response came within hours. Good work. I am sending Victoria Price, best mediator in the solar system. She has resolved labor disputes on Mars, Venus, and 3 other mining colonies. She arrives in 4 days. Keep both sides talking until then, 4 days. Derek had to keep the peace for 4 days. It sounded simple. It was not. The next morning, Derek met with the corporation managers. 3 men in expensive suits sitting behind a large desk. They looked at Derek with barely hidden contempt. You met with the terrorists, the lead manager said. His name was Lawrence Green. He was 50 years old and looked angry. You sat down and talked to people who are threatening our operations. I met with workers who have legitimate grievances, Derek corrected. Workers whose complaints you have ignored. Workers who lost family members because your company cut corners on safety. Lawrence's face turned red. We did not cut corners. That accident was investigated. It was ruled accidental. By investigators you hired, Derek said calmly. That is why the workers don't trust the results. That is why they want independent inspections, the managers argued. Showed financial reports. Explained their position. Derek listened. Asked questions. Took notes. Just like he had done with Carmen, the corporation's position was this. Mining operations were expensive. Competition was fierce. Profit margins were thin. They were already spending millions on safety equipment. Independent inspections would cost money they did not have. Worker representation would slow down decisions. Profit sharing would drive them out of business. Derek presented Carmen's demands anyway, laid them out clearly, explained why each one mattered. The managers dismissed most of them immediately. Impossible. Unrealistic. Too expensive. What is more expensive? Derek asked quietly. Making safety improvements, or dealing with another accident. Another 12 deaths. Another wave of protests that shut down your entire operation for weeks. The managers went silent. They had not thought about it that way. Derek kept talking, kept presenting ideas, kept pushing them to see the bigger picture. A professional mediator was coming. Someone who specialized in these situations. Someone who could help both sides find solutions. The managers agreed to meet with the mediator, but they made no promises, no commitments. Just an agreement to listen. It was something. Not much, but something. Over the next 3 days, Derek worked nonstop. He shuttled between Carmen and the managers, carried messages, explained positions, tried to find common ground. It was exhausting, frustrating, slow. There were setbacks, moments when it seemed like everything would collapse. A group of young Liberation Front members wanted to storm the corporate offices. Derek stood between them and the doors, literally stood there blocking their path. You have come this far through dialogue, Derek told them. Don't throw it away now. Violence will not get you what you want. It will only give the corporation an excuse to bring in more security, more weapons, more control. Carmen backed him up, told her people to stand down, to trust the process. It worked. Barely. On the corporation side, Lawrence Green tried to hire additional security forces. Derek found out and confronted him. Bringing in armed security will escalate everything, Derek said. It will prove to the workers that you see them as enemies, that you are preparing for war instead of negotiation. We need to protect our assets, Lawrence argued. Your assets are your workers, Derek shot back. Without them, you have nothing. No one to operate the mines, no one to extract the minerals, no one to make you money. Maybe start treating them like assets worth protecting instead of threats to be controlled. Lawrence canceled the security order, reluctantly, but he did it. Finally, Victoria Price arrived. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and an aura of absolute competence. She listened to Derek's briefing, asked pointed questions, reviewed all the documents. Then she got to work. Victoria spent 2 weeks on series. She met with everyone, Workers, managers, Carmen, Lawrence, Marcus, Derek. She listened to all sides, asked hard questions, pushed people to see past their positions to their actual interests. Slowly, painfully, an agreement took shape. Independent safety inspections funded by the corporation, but conducted by neutral third parties. 2 worker representatives on the colony council with full voting rights. Improved medical facilities with equipment purchased over the next year. A mediation board for contract disputes. Limited profit sharing tied to safety records. Neither side got everything they wanted, but both sides got enough. Enough to feel heard, enough to feel respected, enough to believe things could actually improve. The agreement was signed in the colony's main meeting hall. Workers and managers in the same room for the first time in months. Carmen and Lawrence shook hands. It was awkward, stiff, but it happened. After the ceremony, Carmen found Derek. "This wouldn't have happened without you," she said. "You came here as a cop, but you acted like a human being first." "Someone recently taught me the importance of that distinction," Derek replied. He was thinking of Chief Washington, of the lesson she had taught him. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "You are welcome back here anytime, Morrison. Hell, we might even offer you a job." Derek smiled, but he knew his work was not finished. He had one more person to report to, one more conversation that would determine his future. The transport back to Neo-Chicago Station felt different from the one going out. Derek sat in his cabin working on his report, a comprehensive document detailing everything that had happened, every meeting, every conversation, every setback and breakthrough. He wanted Chief Washington to understand not just what he had accomplished, but what he had learned. He wrote about Marcus, how the security coordinator had been suspicious at first, how that suspicion was earned through years of station cops coming in and giving orders without understanding the situation, how Derek had learned to listen first, to admit what he did not know, to ask for help instead of pretending to have all the answers. He wrote about Carmen, about her anger and her pain and her determination to protect the workers, about how that anger was justified, about how easy it would have been to dismiss her as a radical or a troublemaker, about how wrong that would have been. She was not a radical. She was someone fighting for basic human dignity and safety. He wrote about the corporation managers, about their fear of failure, their pressure from shareholders, their genuine concern about keeping the colony operational, about how they were not monsters, just people trying to survive in a competitive system. People who had made mistakes but who were capable of change when given the right incentives. Most importantly, Derek wrote about what he had learned about himself, about his own biases, his own assumptions, his tendency to see rules as more important than people, his mistake of thinking that following procedure was the same as doing the right thing. The report was honest, brutally honest in places. Derek did not try to make himself look good. He included his mistakes, his moments of doubt, the times he almost gave up, the times he wanted to just follow old habits and give orders instead of listening. When the transport docked, Derek went straight to the police headquarters. He submitted his report electronically, then requested a meeting with Chief Washington. Her assistant told him she would see him in 1 hour. Derek spent that hour walking around the station, looking at familiar corridors with new eyes. He saw people differently now, not as potential threats or rule breakers, but as individuals, each with their own stories, their own struggles, their own reasons for being here. When the hour was up, Derek returned to headquarters, Chief Washington's office, the same office where she had given him this assignment, where she had offered him a second chance instead of ending his career. He knocked, entered, found Chief Washington sitting at her desk, reading something on her screen. His report, probably. She gestured for him to sit. He sat, then waited. Chief Washington read in silence for what felt like forever. Derek watched her face, tried to read her expression, could not. She remained neutral, professional, revealing nothing. Finally, she looked up. "Officer Morrison, this report demonstrates something I hoped to see but was not certain I would. Growth." "Thank you, ma'am," Derek said. "You went to Ceres thinking you were there to keep the peace, to prevent violence, to enforce order." Chief Washington leaned back in her chair. "But you learned that keeping the peace requires more than that. It requires understanding, empathy, the willingness to see multiple perspectives. The courage to admit when you don't have all the answers. I learned that from someone who gave me a chance I didn't deserve, Derek said quietly. Chief Washington smiled slightly. Let me be clear about something. When I walked into that courtroom weeks ago, I was not setting a trap for you specifically. I was there to observe general procedures, to see how things worked. What happened was genuine. Derek nodded. I know, ma'am. And my response was genuinely wrong. Yes, it was. But what matters now is what you did afterward. Chief Washington stood and walked to the window. Earth turned slowly below. Many officers would have become defensive, bitter, angry at being called out. You chose to learn instead. That is rare. She turned back to face him. I am creating a new division, community relations and crisis mediation. The job is to prevent situations like Ceres from escalating to violence, to build bridges between police and civilians, to train other officers in the approach you developed. Derek felt his heart speed up. That sounds important. It is. And I want you to head it. Chief Washington returned to her desk. You will have a small team to start. Your job will be training officers across the entire orbital station network, teaching them what you learned. How to listen, how to check their assumptions, how to see past rules to the people those rules are meant to serve. Derek sat stunned. Ma'am, I am honored. But there are officers with more experience, more training, better qualifications. Experience isn't what matters here. Authenticity is. Chief Washington looked at him directly. You lived this transformation. You made real mistakes and faced real consequences. You learned hard lessons. Other officers need to hear that from someone who has been through it, not from some expert who has never struggled with their own biases. Derek thought about it, about standing in front of other officers, telling them about his failure, about the courtroom incident, about how he had treated Chief Washington. It would be embarrassing, humiliating even, but maybe that was the point. Maybe real change required that kind of honesty. I accept, Derek said. I won't let you down, Chief. I know you won't. Chief Washington extended her hand. Derek stood and shook it. Because you understand something now that many officers never learn. The badge doesn't make you right. It makes you responsible. Those words hit Derek hard. Responsible, not powerful, not always correct. Responsible. Accountable for the impact of his actions. Answerable to the people he served. You start next week, Chief Washington said. Use this week to prepare. Think about how you want to structure the training. What lessons matter most. How to reach officers who might be resistant to change. Yes, ma'am. Derek headed for the door. Then he stopped and turned back. Chief, can I ask you something? Of course. You said someone once gave you a second chance, that they believed you could learn and grow. What happened? What was your mistake? Chief Washington was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke. I was a young officer on Mars, cocky, certain I knew better than everyone else. I ignored advice from an older officer, someone with decades of experience. I thought I knew better, made a decision that put civilians in danger. People could have died because of my arrogance. What happened? Derek asked. The older officer stepped in, fixed my mistake, saved those civilians. Then instead of reporting me, which would have ended my career, he sat me down, told me that being a good officer wasn't about being right. It was about being willing to learn, to listen, to put ego aside for the sake of the mission. And you remembered that lesson, Derek said, every day. Chief Washington smiled. That officer taught me that leadership means giving people room to make mistakes and learn from them. That is what I am trying to do here. Create a culture where admitting errors makes you stronger, not weaker. Where growth matters more than perfection. Derek nodded. Understanding something fundamental. This was bigger than him. Bigger than one incident in one courtroom. This was about changing how an entire organization thought about policing, about service, about what it meant to protect people. He left Chief Washington's office feeling something he had not felt in weeks. Hope. Not just hope for his own future, but hope for something larger. A vision of policing that put people first. That valued understanding over control. That saw citizens as partners rather than potential threats. Derek went home that night and started planning. Outlining training modules. Thinking about exercises. Considering how to reach officers who had spent years doing things one way. How to challenge them without making them defensive. How to inspire real change. He thought about starting each session with his own story. The courtroom, his assumptions, his failure, his chance at redemption. If he was honest about his own mistakes, maybe other officers would feel safe admitting theirs. Maybe that vulnerability would create space for real growth. As Derek worked late into the night, he felt something shift inside him. A sense of purpose. A calling. This was not just a job anymore. This was a mission. A chance to help build something better. To pass forward the gift Chief Washington had given him. The chance to grow. To change. To become not just a better officer, but a better person. And in doing so, to help humanity become better too. 6 months passed like a blur. Derek threw himself into the new job with everything he had. The Community Relations and Crisis Mediation Division started small. Just Derek and 2 other officers. A tiny office on the training level. Basic equipment. But it grew quickly. Derek developed a training program that was different from anything the police force had seen before. It started with his story, standing in front of a room full of officers and telling them exactly what he had done wrong. How he had blocked Chief Washington in the courtroom. How he had refused to check her credentials. How he had called security to remove his own commanding officer. The first time he told that story, the room went silent. Some officers looked uncomfortable. Others looked skeptical. A few looked relieved, like they had made similar mistakes but never admitted them. Then Derek explained what he had learned. About assumptions. About bias. About the difference between following rules and actually serving people. He made them do exercises, role-playing scenarios where they had to check their first instincts, question their assumptions, see situations from multiple perspectives. It was hard work. Some officers resisted. They had spent years doing things one way. Changing felt threatening. Derek understood that. He had been there himself. So he was patient, persistent. He kept showing them why this mattered. Kept connecting it to their real experiences. The training program expanded. From Neo-Chicago Station to other orbital stations, from the training academy to veteran officers, Derek traveled constantly, teaching, training, sharing what he had learned on series, what Carmen and Marcus had taught him. Results started showing up in the data. Community complaints about police conduct dropped way down. Officers reported better relationships with civilians. Situations that might have escalated to violence were resolved through dialogue instead. The approach was working. Chief Washington tracked the progress carefully. She called Derek into her office regularly, asked for updates, offered suggestions, supported the program when other senior officers questioned whether it was necessary. Some of those senior officers thought the training was too soft, too focused on feelings instead of enforcement. They wanted police to be strong, authoritative, in control. Derek understood their concerns, but he also knew they were wrong. Real strength, Derek learned, was not about control. It was about restraint, about choosing understanding over force, about admitting mistakes instead of defending them. That took more courage than just following orders ever would. Derek stayed in touch with people from series. Carmen sent him updates about the colony. The agreement was holding. The independent safety inspections had found problems. Real problems that the corporation was now fixing. Worker representatives on the council were making a difference, slowly. But real change was happening. 3 other mining colonies had adopted similar agreements, using the series model as a template, preventing conflicts before they escalated, building trust between workers and management, saving lives. Marcus sent occasional messages too, jokes mostly. Comments about how Derek had actually learned something during his time on series. Invitations to visit again. Derek promised he would when time allowed. One day, Chief Washington called Derek to her office. He arrived to find her reviewing reports on multiple screens. Data from stations across the solar system. Crime statistics. Complaint records. Officer performance evaluations. "Sit down, Derek," she said. First name basis now. They had moved past formality over the months. Built a working relationship based on mutual respect. Derek sat, wondering what this was about. The Earth Council has been reviewing police operations across all orbital stations, Chief Washington said. They are looking for best practices, programs that work, models to expand system-wide. Derek felt his pulse quicken. System-wide. That meant stations around Earth, Mars, Venus, Jupiter. Everywhere humans had established permanent presence in space. Your community relations program caught their attention. Chief Washington turned her screen so Derek could see. Crime reduction of 15% across stations using your training. Community complaints down 60%. Officer satisfaction up. Civilian trust in police improving for the first time in a decade. Those numbers felt surreal. Derek had hoped his work would help. But this was bigger than he had imagined. The council wants us to present at the Solar System Security Conference next month, Chief Washington continued. They want to make your model the standard for all human space operations. They want every police force using this approach. Derek felt overwhelmed. Every police force. Millions of officers. Billions of civilians. The scale was almost incomprehensible. I want you to lead the presentation, Chief Washington said. Tell them your story. Show them the data. Explain why this matters, Chief, Derek started. There are people more qualified. Better speakers. Officers with more experience presenting to high-level audiences. We have had this conversation before. Chief Washington smiled. Experience is not what matters. Authenticity is. You lived this. You made the mistakes. You learned the lessons. You built the program. It needs to be you. Derek thought about standing in front of the council. Senior officials from every major human settlement, military leaders, police chiefs, politicians, all of them listening to him admit his failures, hearing about how he humiliated his commanding officer because of his own biases. It would be hard, uncomfortable, but maybe that discomfort was necessary. Maybe real change required that kind of honest vulnerability. I will do it, Derek said. I will tell them everything. The whole story. No holding back. Good. Chief Washington looked pleased. That is exactly what they need to hear. Not some sanitized version, not corporate speak. The real truth about what it takes to change, to grow, to become better. Derek spent the next month preparing, writing his presentation, gathering data, creating visual aids, but mostly just practicing honesty, making sure he could tell his story without flinching, without minimizing his mistakes, without making excuses. The night before the conference, Derek could not sleep. He kept thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The courtroom. Chief Washington, Ceres, Carmen, and Marcus, all the officers he had trained, all the people whose lives had been touched by this work. It started with one mistake, one moment of bias, one failure to check his assumptions. But that mistake had led to growth, to learning, to something bigger than himself, something that might actually make a difference across human space. Derek thought about what Chief Washington had said months ago, that the badge does not make you right. It makes you responsible. That responsibility felt heavy now, but good, like something worth carrying. He thought about humanity spreading across the solar system, building colonies, establishing settlements, creating new communities among the stars, and he thought about whether those communities would carry forward the old prejudices, the old assumptions, the old ways of dividing people into us and them, or whether they could do better, learn faster, build societies based on understanding instead of fear, on dialogue instead of force, on dignity for everyone regardless of their background or appearance. That was the real work. Not just training police officers, but helping humanity become better as a species, more just, more fair, more willing to see each other as individuals deserving respect. Derek finally fell asleep near dawn. And when he woke up, he felt ready to stand before the council, ready to tell his story, ready to admit his failures and share what he had learned, ready to help build something better. The Solar System Security Conference was held on Earth, in Geneva. Derek had not been back to Earth in 7 years. The gravity felt strange, heavy. Every step took effort. But he barely noticed. His mind was focused on what was coming. The conference hall was enormous. Hundreds of seats arranged in semicircles facing a central stage. Representatives from every major human settlement. Earth governments. Mars colonies. Venus stations. The Jupiter moons. Even delegates from the outer system. Everyone who had a stake in how humanity policed itself across space. Derek stood backstage waiting for his turn. Chief Washington stood beside him. She looked calm, confident, like she did this every day. Nervous, she asked. Terrified, Derek admitted. Good. Chief Washington smiled. Fear means you understand what is at stake. Just remember why you are here. Not to impress anyone, not to look smart, just to tell the truth. That is all they need. The moderator called Derek's name. He walked onto the stage. The lights were bright. The audience was a sea of faces. Important faces. Powerful people. All watching him, Derek reached the podium, took a breath. Then he began, "My name is Derek Morrison. I am here to tell you about my biggest failure as a police officer, and about what that failure taught me about what it really means to serve humanity." He told them everything. The courtroom. How he had blocked Chief Washington. How he had refused to check her credentials. How he had made assumptions based on appearance. How he had called security to remove the woman who was about to become his commanding officer. The audience was completely silent. No coughing. No rustling papers. No whispered conversations. Just absolute attention. Derek continued. He talked about the second chance Chief Washington had given him. About Ceres, about Carmen and Marcus. About learning to listen instead of just enforcing rules. About understanding that good policing required more than just following procedures. It required seeing people as people, not as categories, not as threats, but as individuals with their own stories and struggles. He showed them the data. Crime reduction, complaint decreases, improved community relations, lives saved, conflicts prevented, real measurable results from changing how police thought about their work. But Derek kept coming back to the human element, because data was important, but it was not the whole story. The whole story was about people, about Carmen who lost her brother and fought to prevent other families from experiencing that pain, about Marcus who spent decades trying to keep a mining colony safe with inadequate resources, about workers who just wanted to do their jobs without dying, about managers who were scared of failure but capable of change when given the right incentives. "Here is what makes humanity special," Derek said. He was near the end of his presentation now. "We have colonized the solar system. We have built stations that house millions. We have created technology that our ancestors would call magic. We have achieved incredible things, but none of that matters if we forget the basics. Respect, dignity, the willingness to admit when we are wrong, the courage to learn from our mistakes, the capacity to see past our biases and prejudices to the shared humanity underneath." Derek paused, looked out at the audience. Those are not soft skills. Those are not nice-to-have extras. Those are fundamental to everything we are trying to build out here, because if we carry our old prejudices into space, if we spread our biases to new colonies, if we let fear and assumption guide our actions instead of understanding and dialogue, then what is the point? We will just be recreating the same problems in new locations. A woman in the audience raised her hand. Derek recognized her, a senior official from the Mars government. He nodded for her to speak. "Officer Morrison, your story is compelling, but how do we balance this approach with maintaining authority? Police need to be respected. They need to be able to enforce laws. Doesn't your approach undermine that?" Derek smiled. "I used to think the same thing. I thought authority came from being right, from being in control, from never showing weakness. But I learned something different on Ceres. True authority doesn't come from never being wrong. It comes from being trusted to do what is right even when it is hard. Even when it means acknowledging your own mistakes. Even when it means putting ego aside to serve the greater good." He gestured to Chief Washington in the audience. "My commanding officer gave me a second chance when most would have just fired me. She trusted that I could learn, that I could grow, that I could become better. That is leadership. That is real authority, not the power to punish, but the wisdom to teach, the courage to admit mistakes, the vision to see potential in people even when they cannot see it in themselves." More questions came. Derek answered them honestly. Some were skeptical. Some were supportive. All were engaged. The presentation ran over time. The moderator finally had to cut off questions so the conference could continue. As Derek left the stage, people approached him, wanting to talk, wanting details about the training program, wanting to share their own experiences, their own struggles with bias and assumption, their own desire to do better. That evening, the council voted. The community relations model would become standard across all human space operations. Every police academy would incorporate the training. Every station would establish similar divisions. The approach that started with one officer's mistake would now shape how millions of officers thought about their work. Derek stood at a window in his hotel room, looking up at the night sky. Somewhere up there was Neo Chicago Station. series, all the places where this journey had taken him, all the people who had helped him learn and grow. His datapad chimed. A message from Carmen. I watched your presentation. The whole thing was broadcast to the colonies. You did good, Morrison. You told the truth. That matters more than you know. The workers here saw a cop admit he was wrong. Saw him learn. Saw him change. That gives people hope that the system can work. Thank you. Derek saved the message. Another one came in. From Marcus. Not bad for a station cop. You actually learned something during your time out here. Come visit again soon. We miss having someone around who knows how to listen. Derek smiled. He would visit, soon, but first he had work to do. Expanding the program, training trainers, helping other officers make the same journey he had made from assumption to understanding, from control to service, from enforcing rules to protecting people. Years passed. The program grew, became standard, became normal. A new generation of officers came up learning these principles from the start, learning to check their assumptions, to listen before acting, to see civilians as partners rather than problems. Crime rates across human space continued to decline, not because of harsher enforcement, but because of better relationships, because communities trusted their police, because police understood the people they served, because the system worked for everyone instead of just some. Derek and Chief Washington continued working together, building, teaching, spreading the model further. To new colonies, to frontier stations, to anywhere humans settled and needed systems of justice that actually served justice. The story of their unlikely partnership became legend. Not because it was extraordinary, but because it was necessary. It showed that humanity's expansion into space meant nothing if they carried old prejudices with them. That real progress required internal growth as much as external expansion, and it proved something fundamental about what made humanity special. Not their technology, not their ability to build stations and ships and colonies, but their capacity to recognize mistakes, to learn from failure, to extend dignity across all differences, to build civilizations based on understanding rather than force. That was the true achievement. Not conquering space, but conquering the limitations within themselves, not spreading across the stars, but spreading justice and dignity and respect to every corner of human civilization. In the end, the story that began with one officer's prejudice in one courtroom became a story about humanity itself. About the choice between carrying forward old patterns or creating new ones. Between letting fear and assumption guide actions or choosing understanding and dialogue. Between seeing differences as threats or recognizing them as the rich diversity that made humanity strong. Derek Morrison never forgot where he started. Never forgot the courtroom. Never forgot the look on Chief Washington's face when he blocked her. Never forgot the shame of that moment. He kept it with him. Let it remind him why the work mattered, why every training session mattered, why every conversation about bias and assumption mattered, because humanity's greatest strength was not technology. It was the capacity to look another person in the eye and say I was wrong. Teach me to be better. And then actually meaning it, actually doing the work. Actually growing and changing and becoming more than they were. That was what made humanity worthy of the stars. Not their ships or their weapons or their colonies, but their willingness to keep learning, keep growing, keep striving to be better, to build societies where everyone had dignity, where everyone had voice, where everyone mattered. And in a universe that often seemed cold and indifferent, that very human quality of growth and redemption and mutual respect became the thing that truly set humanity apart, not as conquerors, but as builders, not as dominators, but as partners, not as perfect beings, but as people always trying to become better.